Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on the Sports Stories podcast. Now, for this one, I'm going to be going over my Week 14 predictions for the NFL season. It feels like, not even that long ago. I was already on I was doing Week 1. I was doing week prediction, or not the week prediction, but like the record prediction video. It's been a crazy fast season, but we're already on Week 14 and things are starting to come to a close, but, some teams are still really in it. You don't really have any sure teams. We have the division winners, but basically anything besides that, we don't really know who's going up to the playoffs. Some playoff spots are really up for contention, so it's going to be exciting to see here, but let's get right into these Week 14 predictions. Now, coming in with the first game tomorrow on Thursday, we have the Raiders at the Rams. Now, the Raiders coming off of a 7-point win against the Chargers, winning 27-20. They did their thing, really. It didn't look good in the beginning, kind of like how the Seahawks game started out. But the defense was able to kind of come in clutch with some really good plays and really stepped up when they needed to. And the offense has just looked insanely better over the past couple weeks. Josh Jacobs, even though he didn't get 300 yards from scrimmage, he still had a very good game. Derek Carr still got that pick, but, really, he's Derek Carr, not the most accurate or like the best quarterback in the league, but I think he can definitely continue to grow on that, but he has looked a little bit better as of late, and he's definitely targeting Davante Adams way more, and it looks like Josh McDaniels is kind of setting up a new system for the team, and they're just kind of rattling things off as of right now. So, the Raiders really on a pretty good win streak overall. And then looking at the Rams, they're coming off of a loss, I believe, against the Seahawks. That one was a lot closer than I thought it would have been, since, the Rams weren't really performing well. Matthew Stafford was out for this one. Looks like Aaron Donald's going to be out for most of the season now. This Rams team is really crumbling here. But they just could not do much. John Wolford stepped in as a backup. But yeah, again, just really nothing much here to really talk about. It was definitely closer than I thought it would have been. Mainly because, how bad they were doing prior. Seahawks were still able to win due to a late touchdown, but, just this Rams team. This Rams team just has not looked good whatsoever without their star players now. And again, Aaron Donald not in for this one, I believe. Not in for this one. So, overall, it was just a really tough game for the Rams. I think it's going to be a tough rest of the season. I don't really see them winning that many games. Here this week, they got the Raiders, and then again, the Raiders, and then they got the Packers, possible win against the Broncos, and then they got the Chargers, and then Seahawks, the final week of the season. So, there's a good chance that the Rams either do lose out or at least win one in the next stretch of 5 games. So, it's going to be interesting, mainly because of, everything that's happening as right now surrounding the Rams. But yeah, again, just the Rams. Just one of the more surprising dip-offs that I've ever seen from a Super Bowl champion. But going back into this game, I think the Rams defense definitely takes a hit, especially losing one of the best defensive linemen in the league. And, they're going up against one of the worst offensive lines in the league. But, maybe Bobby Wagner can kind of step in there on a blitz or something, but he's more of like a zone man type of linebacker. He doesn't really have the same speed as he used to, so I could see him just not blitzing whatsoever. But with that, you have Josh Jacobs, who has been able to run the ball, and also the secondary hasn't really been doing too well. I believe that they're most likely going to have Jalen Ramsey on Davante Adams, but I think overall it's a very interesting matchup. But I think Davante Adams most likely will win that one. Matt Collins has been able to produce when Davante Adams is locked up per se. So, I mean, really, I think this Raiders team, I think they're going to be able to continue the win streak. However, I don't think they're going to be able to get into the playoffs since it's a really tight race in the AFC, and you're really going to have to win a lot of games. So I highly doubt that they're going to be able to get to the playoffs, but I think they're going to be able to continue this win streak here against the Rams. And I have the Raiders winning by 7. Okay, and now next up, we have a very big in-division game here in the NFC North with the Lions and the Vikings at the Lions. Now, this one is mainly important because, as a Lions fan, I'm tracking when the Lions are going to be able to make it to the playoffs again since 2016. And this year, they possibly could do it, okay? It's a very, very big stretch. Don't get me wrong, but if the Lions do win out and they move to 10-7, there's a good chance, if the Seahawks lose out, which most likely won't happen, if the Commanders lose out, which is a possibility, or if the Giants lose out, which is an even bigger possibility than the Commanders, the Lions here have a chance to make it into the playoffs, especially if they do win out. And with the remaining schedule, I find it pretty easy. I mean, they got the Vikings. Then the next week, I believe, is the Jets. And then the next week is the Panthers. And then after the Panthers, Bears. And then last week, they got the Packers. So I think this is a very winnable schedule for the Lions if they really play their cards right. They had an amazing game, dominating game over Jacksonville, winning 40-14. I think, they definitely have some things to go. But let me go ahead and start with the Vikings and then go further in with the Lions. The Vikings coming off of a close win over the Jets. Very surprising close win. And, I mean, the Vikings defense did really good in the red zone against the Jets. Really just limiting them to, 4 conversions in the red zone out of 17 visits. So, I mean, really, the Vikings defense did great in the red zone, did great in the open field. However, Patrick Peterson was on Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson got a lot of yards. So, not really sure what's to come there, especially if they have Patrick Peterson or Amon-Ra St. Brown. There could be a big possibility with that. With that happening as well, with him, Garrett Wilson. Jameson Williams might be a big threat to the Vikings defense, but I mean the Vikings defense did play really well overall against a Jets offense, which is kind of struggling. I mean, they had a lot of hype coming in with Mike White, Mike White winning more games again, but I mean, it just doesn't look like the same type of defense, same dominating defense. I mean, the defensive line doing their thing. But the fact that it was so close and really came up to the end of the game was really surprising, since they are playing a Jets team that, in my opinion, isn't that good. Justin Jefferson was only limited to 7 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown, which, for him is very low. And he was up against Sauce Gardner. So, I mean, as you remember, when the Lions did play the Vikings previously in the season, I want to say week 4, Jeff Okudah basically logged down Justin Jefferson to only 19 yards when he was covering him. Obviously, Justin Jefferson did get more, but that was only when Jeff Okudah was guarding him. Justin Jefferson had 19 yards on 2 receptions out of 3 targets. So, I mean, Jeff Okudah hopefully has the same type of game against Justin Jefferson. As a Lions fan, I do wish to see that happen because, I mean, sorry, but I am a big Jeff Okudah hater, okay? But I think, when he does stand out, he does his work the best. It's just, there's just some things that, I expect out of him more, since he was a third overall pick, coming up against a lot of the other draft prospects that were in his draft class. So obviously I'm going to hold him to a higher standard, but I mean, he's been doing well this season, coming back off an injury. And he's playing well. So hopefully he does play in this one, since he is having some lingering injury issues. And then pair that along with Jay Jacobs on that Lions defensive side of the ball. They're doing great. And I think the Lions defense has improved significantly from the last time that the Vikings did play the Lions. I think this defense has finally found its chemistry. They finally found their rhythm, what they need to do, who to put in, what personnel. I think they finally have caught on to what they need, the formula for a successful defense. Obviously, they're still statistically one of the lowest defenses in the league, but their performances, for me, especially against the Jaguars, showed out and showed a lot on what they can do defensively. And then going to the offense, I mean, this Lions offense is amazing, okay? Not only has Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark coming off of IR, he's been a different beast. I mean, he's going off. He's showing out. Player of the game last week, in my opinion, against the Jaguars, his former team. Josh Reynolds possibly coming back. Khalif Raymond doing his thing, being a little slot guy. Love to see it there. And then the offensive line still doing their thing. Jared Goff out here, not throwing as many picks. That it's hard for me to compliment Jared Goff. And then running, I mean, Jamal Williams, 14 touchdowns, leads the league in rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's great in the red zone. DeAndre Swift doing his thing. He got a touchdown last week against the Jags. I mean, this offense is great. But now you add the final piece in the Infinity Gauntlet, and you get Jameson Williams back. Now, they did clear him to play against the Jaguars, but I believe he only played like 3 snaps at wide receiver, and they had him playing gunner a little bit during the game. Just kind of see how he is with in-game movement, since he was just cleared, 3 weeks ago at this point, to practice, and then he didn't play in the game against the Bills, but then he did play in this one against the Jaguars. He was targeted once that I did see. It wasn't incompletion. It was pretty well guarded route. So not that big of a sample size that we've seen from him, but I literally can't wait for him to play. Originally he was cleared, or the timeline was to be cleared by the Vikings game, or this game. So this one he should be fully in, and hopefully he plays the majority of the snaps, because I can't wait to see him and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the same type of scheme. Can't wait to see what that brings to the offense. And that's another big reason, and another big change to this Lions team that the Vikings team hasn't seen since the last time they met. And the Vikings even still struggled against a Lions defense that wasn't good, and still isn't that good. They struggled against them in week 4, and I feel like this defense has gotten a little bit better, and I feel like the Vikings will have even more of a struggle. And then offensively, I think the Lions have gotten extremely better. They've learned what they need to do, be a little bit more precise with the ball. Jared Goff's doing that. DeAndre Swift's getting back to healthy. This team, it looks like just the Lions have everything going perfect for them as of right now, to really start making a run to the playoffs. And it's just, everything's falling together in just the most perfect timing, in my opinion, for the Lions. So if in this one, I have the Lions winning by 2 against the Vikings. I think, the Lions very well could have won that one in week 4 against the Vikings. They just gave up a early 14-point lead. So, I mean, in these games, they're getting to leads really early, and they're keeping them now, really late into the season. So I think the Lions finally can get a lead and keep it possibly, or they will be in a really close one with the Vikings, and we'll have to see where it goes. But this one for the Lions is very important because this one's probably the hardest game that you're going to have to play, and you're going to have to win out in order to make the playoffs. So the Lions will have to win this one. I think the team knows that, the players know that. I think this is a very big game for the Lions, and I think they're definitely going to be showing out. I think the Vikings, they still have a lot of fight in them. It's just, they only have 2 losses. They're 10-2 or whatever. So, I mean, I don't think, or 10-3, I guess. And, I mean, they're really not worried, but, if the Lions win out, the Lions need this playoff spot. So, I feel like the Lions are going to want it more. They're a little bit hungrier for a win. They're coming off a win at home against the Jaguars, dominating Vikings going into Detroit to play. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting situation, but I can't wait to see as a Lions fan, and I really hope they do win. So I had the Lions here winning by 2. Now, next up, we have another North Divisional rivalry matchup, but it's in the AFC. We have Baltimore at Pittsburgh. Now, Baltimore losing a big piece with Lamar Jackson being out with a PCL tear or injury, I believe. I'm not sure if it's a tear or if it's like just a partial injury, but he will be out for 1 to 3 weeks, so he's definitely going to be out for this game. But this does kind of throw the Ravens' playoff or potential playoff run to a screeching halt because, I mean, looking at the game against the Broncos, they were struggling against the Broncos for the majority of the game. And then Lamar goes out, and everything just kind of like was just a stalemate for the most part up until that last, field goal, touchdown, yeah. I mean, it just was not a great showing by the Ravens playing against such a bad team as the Broncos. I mean, defensively, they really didn't do well either. I mean, they only held the Broncos to 9 points, but it's just, it just doesn't look good, to not be able to dominate a team like the Broncos. And then as for the Steelers, they've been coming out, and showing what they can do. They didn't start off the season great, but, the return of TJ Watt has definitely turned this team around. I feel like Kenny Pickett is just warming up to the idea of being an NFL quarterback, starting NFL quarterback. I mean, he didn't look good early in this season, but, now he's playing pretty well. George Pickens. I mean, overall, this Steelers team looks like they're pretty hot. They just beat the Falcons by 3. Really good defensive play in that one. But as for this one, I do have the Ravens winning. I think this one's going to be a little bit of an upset pick. But I have the Ravens winning by 6. And I feel like that's because, you obviously don't expect your starting quarterback to just leave the game with an injury. So I feel like their game plan might have been changed. But now they got Huntley in full time, and I think they're going to be starting to make some game plans surrounding him. And maybe they can work something out. The defense, I feel like, could perform well. They just didn't show it against the Broncos. So, again, we'll have to see. But I feel like the Ravens will have a little bit of an advantage, getting some time to really set up a new system around Huntley and get that, I guess, refresher instead of, having him out or having him in for just the middle of the game. So I do have the Ravens here winning by 6. I feel like the coaching will definitely have a big role in this one. Now, next up, we have the Jaguars at the Titans. Now, the Jaguars coming off of a pretty bad loss against the Lions. One big thing to watch out for is Trevor Lawrence's ankle. Now, before halftime in that Lions game, Trevor Lawrence kind of got rolled up on his ankle with a sack, and just kind of rolled up on him. He was down on the floor a little bit. Actually, it might not be ankle, it might be knee. It's either ankle or knee. But he rolled up on his leg. It didn't look good whatsoever. He was down for a little bit. He got back up, and it was halftime. Then he did end up playing in that game. He went back up and playing. So, I mean, it doesn't seem that bad if he was still playing on it. Obviously, they did still lose in pretty dominating fashion, but, I mean, it shouldn't look as bad for the team if he is still playing on it. I believe Doug Peterson came out and did say that it came back negative, the MRI on his knee or ankle, but it came back negative, so he should be fine to play in this one. But overall, I mean, the Lions tapped in something that the Jaguars, I mean, they just could not really advance the ball. I mean, they got to the red zone a few times. They were able to score a touchdown. The 2-point conversion, 2 field goals. So they were able to get down there. Just, I mean, the defense to give up 40 points. And Trayvon Walker, first pick is first pick versus third pick. I mean, the Lions have beat both of the top 3 defensive ends. I mean, Thibodeau, they beat the Giants. Walker, they beat the Jags. And Aiden Hutchinson, looking like one of the better defensive ends. But aside from that, I mean, this Jaguars defense did not play well whatsoever. I mean, they allowed 40 points to be hung on them. Jaguars had a few turnovers, 1 fumble from Travis Etienne, who should have been playing a lot better, but the Jaguars kind of seem to abandon the run game as a whole, which is kind of interesting because the Lions are one of the worst defenses at running the ball, but they still kind of traveled away from running the ball and started passing a little bit more. And Trevor Lawrence is not a bad passer, so I mean he was able to do his thing, but overall just not a great game for them. And then as for the Titans, they're coming off of a pretty dominating loss to the Eagles, where A.J. Brown made his return, and it was like, yeah, you shouldn't have traded me, and proceeded to absolutely destroy them. He pooped on all of their heads, okay? He was going off. If I'm able to pull up the stats here for A.J. Brown, he had 119 yards. 119 yards on 8 receptions and 2 receiving touchdowns. I mean, he did great. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody in the football room has seen him run over that Titans defender on that route. I mean, everybody's like, oh, offensive BI, but, the ball wasn't in the air, and he was in the middle of the route. He should have gotten the way. He should have gotten out of the way, and he got pushed down to the floor. I mean, A.J. Brown's just a dominator. But Titans, surprisingly, Derrick Henry kind of dipping off again. And this team's playoff hopes are kind of in the air as of right now, in my opinion. I mean, they're still one of the better teams. There's a good chance that they win their division. I mean, the AFC South isn't that hard as of right now. They're 7-5 and first in the AFC South. So I mean, clearly, it's not really that hard to really get into the playoffs. But I feel like if they do get in, there's a good chance that they just get knocked out in the first round. I feel like they're not that good of a team, like they were, in the past few seasons. They just don't look the same. And there's something about that. Maybe it's A.J. Brown. Maybe they just can't really advance the play action much. Maybe it's Derrick Henry, since he's aging a little bit. He's a little banged up. Maybe that could have something with it. But I mean, this Titans team just has not looked the same whatsoever. I mean, as for this one, I think it's gonna be a close competition because both teams, it's an AFC South matchup. It's very important. And both teams really haven't shown, their best in the most recent weeks. But in this one, I do have the Jaguars winning by 4. I think they still have a great showing. They still have a lot of potential. And I think if they're really able to attack through the air against the Titans, they should be able to win this one. But again, I do have it really close since it is a AFC South matchup. So I do have the Jaguars winning by 4. Now next up, we have the Eagles at the Giants. Now the Eagles coming in with a very good dominating performance against the Titans. Already talked about it. AJ Brown's performance, he was doing great. Jalen Hurts was doing great. Miles Sanders was doing great. And really the Eagles are now back on a roll from what it seems like. Now they're back. Now they kind of realize, playoffs, you kind of need to be in it. So, gotta need to wake up. But the Eagles able to wake up and destroy the Titans. Really not much I can say about that. They just played a really well all-rounded game. And as for the Giants, coming off of a tie against the Commanders, really surprising. Really good late touchdown with about 2 minutes left in the game by the Commanders to tie everything up. Nobody could really get anything done. It goes into overtime. Again, nobody can really get done. The Giants set up a 65-yard kick for Graham Gano for a game winner. He kicks it, it's up, and it's short. Okay, so then time expires and it's a tie. So, not the best performance by the Giants. They could have done more. As for the Giants, again, their playoff hopes are really in the air as of right now, and nobody really knows if they're going to be able to make it into the playoffs, and there's a good chance that they don't. Saquon Barkley's run game just hasn't looked good in the most recent weeks. The run game's just been being stopped week after week. Daniel Jones is being forced to pass it a little bit more, and you can see how that correlates because they're just starting to lose again. I think Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. I feel like he fools a lot of people. If you look at the stats, he's virtually perfect. Kind of how, people look at Jared Goff. But in Daniel Jones' case, it's worse because Daniel Jones can't, at least Jared Goff's throwing like 40 passes a game, 30 to 40 passes. Daniel Jones is probably throwing like 20 to 30 max. Like he's not throwing that many balls, and you can clearly see why when he plays. It's just the accuracy is not there, decision making is not there. And playing against defenses is really hard again for him. So, really for Daniel Jones, it just does not look great. Then as for this game, I think I have the Eagles winning this one by 8. Again, another division matchup game, but I feel like the Eagles should be a really safe pick here. It just kind of seems like they'll obviously be able to win and beat a Giants team that has struggled as of late. Now next up we have the Bills at the Buccaneers. Now the Bills coming off, I want to say they're coming off of a win. Yes, that's right. They're coming off of a win on Thursday Night Football against the Patriots, where they won by 14. Really good game by the Bills. They delivered on all cylinders, defensively and offensively. I really can't really say much. Not much to critique, really. They just played really well against the Patriots, in my opinion. And then as for the Jets, they're coming off of a loss to the Vikings, losing by 5. Still looks like they're going to be hanging on to Mike White as a starting quarterback. I think he still played really well, even though they went against a pretty good Vikings defense that limited him to 0 passing touchdowns. He went 31 for 57 on 369 yards and 2 interceptions. Not the best stat line, but again, playing against a really good Vikings defense. And Zach Knight had a great game. 90 yards on 15 rushes. He played really well. Garrett Wilson as well, like I talked about earlier in the episode. Garrett Wilson, 162 yards on 8 receptions. They were doing their thing. It came down to that last drive near the end of the game. They couldn't convert on anything really, but they still showed a lot of fight against a playoff team, in my opinion, in the Vikings. But again, the Jets are one of those teams where losses do matter because they are in a division where It is very close. It is very close for that first place in the AFC East. As of right now, it looks like the Bills are up in the AFC East, winning or with a record of 9-3. Then the Miami Dolphins with a record of 8-4, and then the New York Jets with a record of 7-5, and then the Patriots there at the end with a 6-6 record. So I mean, this one's gonna be really important for the Jets to play against the Bills. If they do win, they probably advance to an 8-5 record, and it really depends on the Dolphins game. If the Dolphins move up to 9-4, they could move up to second, or if the Dolphins even fall to 8-5. And the Bills fall to 9-4, the Jets would be 8-5, so they would be tied for that second spot. So really, I mean, this Jets team is really exciting, especially since they are in such a really competitive division. So it's really gonna be an interesting game. But as for this one, I do have the Bills winning by 7. I think it'll be a close one. You know, the Jets beat the Bills last time they did meet. But it was a close one, and I feel like the Bills, Josh Allen's slightly recovering from that UCL injury. The Jets game was kind of like at the first game back from the UCL injury, and then, I mean, I feel like this team just has been making changes a lot better. Von Miller is out for the season from the looks of it, but they still had a really good game against the Patriots without Von Miller, so I feel like they could still continue to do it, especially against the Jets, so that's why I have the Bills winning by 7. Now next up, we have the Browns at the Bengals, another AFC North division matchup. Now, the Browns coming off of a dominating defensive game against Houston in Deshaun Watson's return to Houston. I mean, the Browns defense, I had them on fantasy. They had 33.3 points. 33.3 points. I mean, there wasn't an offensive touchdown until like the third, fourth quarter. I mean, the Browns defense was just absolutely hanging it up on the Texans. I mean, they just could not the Texans offense just could not do anything against them. And the Browns had a really good game defensively, but it was kind of the exact opposite on the offensive side of the ball. Deshaun Watson didn't look particularly great coming back. He could just be a little rusty. I think they said, like 700 and some days without him starting in a football game. So, I mean, it's definitely been a long time. So, maybe he just does a little rust. But, we'll have to see with this week against the Bengals. And as for the Bengals, Ja'Marr Chase is going to be playing back from the injury. Can't wait to see him, how he does. I mean, really, the Bengals looking, back on that role that they had coming off of a win against the Chiefs, win by 3. I mean, this Bengals team is back on the roll, back on what they were doing, last season. So, we'll see if they make a late playoff run. But as for this one, I do have the Bengals winning by 2 here. I feel like the Bengals definitely, have made some improvements since the last time they played against the Browns. The Browns dominated, again, another defensive domination, by the Browns, early in the season against the Bengals, but the Bengals, I feel like they're gonna have. I think actually the game against the Bengals was the first game without Ja'Marr Chase, so I mean Ja'Marr Chase is coming back. That's definitely a big difference, and also I feel like they just have a new type of swag around them. That the Browns, they have a new quarterback. That could change some things, but Deshaun Watson hadn't looked particularly good at all against the Texans, so we'll have to see how he plays a little bit more, getting a little bit more warmed up, but we'll have to see. But I do have the Bengals winning by 2. Okay, so now on the next matchup, we have the Texans at the Cowboys. Now, the Texans, they're basically going to get the number 1 pick, and all hope for them is practically lost, for them getting basically any more wins. But I mean, this one looks like they're probably gonna lose. Let's see here. Last week they played against the Browns, they played against the Browns, and their offense played absolutely horrendous. The defense really they stood their ground for the most part against Deshaun Watson, but that Texans offense is just super bad. I mean, they couldn't even rely on rely on Dameon Pierce. I mean, he had 73 yards on 18 carries, which is still a good stat line, but I mean, he can't really carry. I mean, Kyle Allen, 201 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Couldn't get anything off the receiving game. And then defense, just was not good whatsoever. So, it wasn't the greatest performance there. It was still somewhat close, but I mean, the Browns defense played really well in this one. And then as for the Cowboys, they came on like a scoreagami though, winning 54-19 against the Colts. And I mean, that Cowboys team, it was like, it was 21-19 in the third quarter, and then they proceeded to score 33 points in the fourth quarter. If I did my math correctly, that would be 33 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, amazing. Like that's just crazy. And they didn't allow any points in the fourth quarter by the Colts. And it was a little rocky there at the beginning, but I think they kept it exciting for a little bit, and then just decided, put the horse out of its misery, and then just ended the game in the fourth quarter. And I mean, in a style that they didn't need to, but they definitely did it then. That Colts team I think they're either going to be looking for a quarterback. It's just been surprising that this offensive line has done as poorly as it has been this season. I mean, there's various injuries to their defense that you could explain why their defense isn't really playing that well, but I could see them trying to go for a wide receiver, quarterback in the draft, because I mean, these are some holes in their positions that they definitely need to fill. Because I mean, Pittman's good, but I mean, is he going to be that good? I don't think he's that good to really replace an entire wide receiver core that's just made up of him. Paris Campbell's been very underwhelming in his career so far. T.Y. Hilton's gone. And then as for quarterback, I mean, Ellinger did okay when he was starting. Matt Ryan, is just kind of washed at this point. Really, that Colts offense just really needs a rebuild to build around Jonathan Taylor at that point. But as for this one with the Colts and Texans, I have the Cowboys winning. I think, it's kind of a unanimous decision. I'd say that any defense, if you're playing fantasy, just pick up any defense that is playing against the Texans, because they will probably score about like 30 points. But definitely the Cowboys, I think, have a good chance of scoring 30 on the Texans offense. I mean, that defense is amazing. So here I have the Cowboys winning. I mean, I think they're just overall the absolute better team. Okay, now next up we have the Chiefs at the Broncos, an AFC West divisional matchup. And the Chiefs coming off of a surprising loss, to the Bengals. Not a lot of people looking at that one. I mean, it was a close game. I think the Chiefs were only favored by 2.5 points. So people did see it if the Bengals would win. I mean, and it wasn't really that bad of a stat line overall, I'd say, for the Chiefs offense. I mean, one big play that did happen, Travis Kelce fumbling, and losing that fumble. That might have really cost them to lose, because, I mean, overall, I mean, they did pretty well. I mean, they were only able to get one sack on Joe Burrow, but I mean, they didn't, have anything, really bad. So I want to say, since the score was, so close, that Travis Kelce fumble may have, changed the tide, pulled it around, and the Bengals ended up winning. Because nothing super negative or super bad on the Bengals either. I think this is really good, evenly matched. Again, just turnovers. With these good teams, you want them to turn the ball over as much as possible. because if you do and you're able to score off that turnover, a lot of things could change in that game. And the Bengals, they did it. They got that fumble and they were able to keep the score, and they won by 3. So, great game played by the Bengals, but the Chiefs just lost the ball. I think that's why they lost the game. Okay, and for the Broncos, I mean, it looked pretty boring, pretty bleak, I'd say. They had like a 9-3 lead the entire game, and then the Ravens were able to score a late touchdown, which caused them to win the game. Just a bad gameplay. I feel bad for any Broncos fan that has to watch the Broncos, because a 9-3 game, they only scored field goals. They didn't score a touchdown. I mean, this is just career lows for Russell Wilson. And every Broncos fan knows, they're most likely going to have to keep him for the rest of his contract, which I believe is 4 years? 4 years, I want to say. It could be more. Again, not really doing my research here. I should probably look that up and see how long his contract is. Let me see. Oh, yep, 4 years. 4 years. And most likely nobody. Actually, no, hold on. 5 years. Yeah, so most likely nobody is going to pick up that contract. Because he has a 5-year, $242 million deal as of right now. So, looks like he's going to be able to just stay there till 2026. So yeah, that's pretty bad. Or 2027, but to do could be out by 2026 with the 4-year, $161 million deal and $31.2 million in dead cap for the Broncos. So, yeah, they're not going to be trading him. They're not going to be able to trade him anytime soon. So it's either going to be benched and paid the highest benched player of all time, or you just kind of have to stick with him. That's a hard decision to make if you're the Broncos front office, because he just does not look good. Maybe you give him another year, see how he pans out. Then by then, you draft somebody like Bo Nix, who's still going to Oregon. He has not committed to the NFL, so maybe there could be something there where they do draft Bo Nix next year. Who knows? If they're this bad again. That was one of the worst games I've seen. They last scored a touchdown and couldn't do anything to come back from it. But as for this game, I do have the Chiefs winning. Again, kind of like the Cowboys-Texans game. Kind of easy and safe to say that the Chiefs are the better team and they're going to be able to win. Okay, now next up, a pretty big matchup that may have playoff implications, possibly not. We got the Buccaneers at the 49ers. Now the Buccaneers coming off an exciting win over the Saints, winning by 1 point, 17-16. Due to a run out of bounds by Mark Ingram with 1 minute left. Wasn't able to get the first down. Saints had a punt, and the rest is history, with the Buccaneers scoring 2 touchdowns in in a minute? No, or is it 3 minutes? It might have been 3 minutes. But, yeah. And, Mark Ingram posted an apology. He was like, I'm sick that I ran out of bounds. But, that was definitely tough. Saints ended up just losing. But the Buccaneers played really well, especially in that last, I want to say they scored, how much did they score? They scored let's see here, they scored twice in about 4 minutes. Yep, so their first drive went 10 plays for 91 yards on 2 minutes and 21 seconds. And then their second touchdown, the game-winning touchdown, was 11 plays, 63 yards in 2 minutes and 26 seconds, with the touchdown being good with 3 seconds left on the clock. That Buccaneers team, they're definitely getting some chemistry late in the season, and we'll have to see, is it enough to get to that playoff spot? So we'll have to see here, see what happens. But great game by the Buccaneers. And then as for the 49ers, they're coming off a dominating and surprising win over the Dolphins. I thought it would at least be close, but 49ers defense just dominated. They played really well. Basically, just broke down the Dolphins defense or offense to extreme lows that we've never seen before. Brock Purdy did his thing, stepping in for Jimmy Garoppolo, who looks like he's going to be out for the majority of the season. But he could come back in the postseason, most likely. Overall, this 49ers team looks really good, and we'll have to see how they produce in the playoffs. But I think the 49ers did really well in this one, especially with Brock Purdy just coming into the game. He executed everything perfectly. Same with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel. They did everything that they could. So, hats off to the 49ers. They did really well in this one. But as for this game, I do have the 49ers winning by 6. I'm sorry, 49ers fans. Because it seems like every time I choose the 49ers, they end up losing. And then every time I don't pick them, they end up winning. But I'm going to choose the 49ers here because they're obviously going to win. I feel like they're the better team, the better defense, better offense. Everything just seems to kind of click for the 49ers. So that's why I choose them here, or I picked them here. Then next up, we have the Panthers at the Seahawks. Now, one thing I forgot to mention in the Rams matchup is that the Panthers did waive Baker Mayfield, and the Rams picked him up due to their quarterback issues with Matthew Stafford being out for the rest of the season. But the Panthers, I believe are still starting Sam Darnold, great quarterback. They're trying to do their best to really stay afloat and not purposely tank, because I feel like that's a pretty easy accusation to put on the Panthers, because they didn't really play all too well. Looking at it here, I believe, I think, because I can't see the Panthers. Okay, here we go. Yep, they did not play. Oh yeah, they were one of the teams that had the bye weeks last week. Okay, so Panthers didn't have anything, but they had a bye week. They were getting some things situated, mainly waiving Baker Mayfield. And the Panthers, I think they're definitely in rebuild mode. Definitely need to add more pieces to that offense. So I can't wait to see what they do with the offseason. And then as for the Seahawks, they're coming off of a win against the Rams, a very close one, but they're still able to get the win. Looking at what went wrong, Geno Smith did throw an interception, but with Kenneth Walker's knee issues that he's having currently, knee or ankle issues, I can't remember the difference between the injuries. Kenneth Walker was really limited, but they were able to get some stuff off the ground. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett both eclipsed 100 yards. Great duo there, but the defense got 2 interceptions. Really overall, it was a pretty good game. I think if the Seahawks were able to really develop a run game, maybe they could have something, but I believe they did just pick up somebody, and I can't remember who they picked up, because it was like a kind of a veteran. But yeah, but Kenneth Walker, is hurt. I believe they're not going to be doing much for him. But they did sign a running back, Wayne Gallman, to their practice squad. That's what they did. But I feel like they signed another running back. I can't remember, but I think the Seahawks have a great future ahead of them. But the Seahawks overall, they did pretty good against the Rams. They just had a few mistakes overall. But as for this one, I do have the Seahawks winning by 8. I think they're definitely overall the better team, and the Panthers are going through some aches as of right now. So the Seahawks just seemed like the best option. Now, a really good matchup of the quarterbacks from the 2020 draft class. We got Tua Tagovailoa versus Justin Herbert. This one, we'll have to see who made the best decision, going with Tua or going with Herbert. And the Dolphins coming off a pretty bad loss against the 49ers. I mean, they did not play great at all whatsoever. Shockingly. I mean, Tua only had 18 completions for 295 yards with 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and was sacked 3 times. The rushing game couldn't do much. Raheem Mostert had 30 yards on 7 carries. Tyreek Hill still doing his thing. 146 yards on 9 receptions and a touchdown. Trent Sherfield coming out of nowhere, 75 yards on 1 reception and a touchdown. But surprisingly, Jalen Waddle only held to 9 yards on the game. And I don't believe there's any noticeable injury with him. But as of right now, they do say his fibula. So he was limited at practice today. So we'll have to see how, that really affects him. But yeah, just was lost there. And Tua Tagovailoa lost a fumble. I mean, the defense did pretty good. 10 quarterback hits, 4 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks on 85 total tackles, along with an interception by Xavier Howard. But, I mean, that's pretty crazy to me. I mean, their defense played well, but the offense just could not produce away from Tyreek Hill and Trent Sherfield. No run game was really established, and Tua Tagovailoa probably had one of the worst games that he's had all season. And this could possibly be a sign to come for the Dolphins if they do head into the playoffs and win the AFC East. But as for the Chargers, coming off of a loss against the Raiders, it started off hot. They were playing really good. They forced a punt, and then the Raiders fumbled, and then interception, touchdown. I mean, really overall, it was pretty bad. Once it got later into the game, and the Raiders were really able to capitalize and take the lead. Nothing really bad from Justin Herbert's end, but the Raiders defense held Austin Eckler to 35 yards on 10 carries. That's definitely a big hit to that offense because they definitely need him. Austin Eckler did lose also a fumble. He did also lose a fumble there, but overall, not the best game played by the Chargers. They could have done a lot more, especially since it is an AFC West matchup. And with that win there, they kept it within 1 game. The Raiders did keep it in 1 game to possibly get to that 2nd spot in the AFC West. We'll have to see what the Chargers can do here, if they can put up a fight here. I think it'll be a very good game, but I do have the Dolphins here winning by 2. I think they're overall, they're the better team. I think they just need a really bounce back game, and I think they can definitely do that against the Chargers. That if the Raiders, played as well as they did, I feel like the Dolphins could play even better. Looking at it here, if I can look at the stats here, Davante Adams had 177 yards that game, and Josh Jacobs had 144 rushing yards. So, this could be a big game for Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill in this one. Really exposing that Chargers defense. So we'll have to see. But again, I do have the Dolphins winning it by 2. I think overall they're the better team. Now, finally, on Monday Night Football, we have the Patriots at the Cardinals. Both teams very surprising, very underwhelming this season. Definitely could do more. The Patriots, they're coming off of a loss to the Bills. Very important AFC East matchup. They didn't play that well at all. Mac Jones only had 195 yards. The rest of the offense did pretty well. Looking at the defense, they had 6 quarterback hits, 3 pass deflections, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. No interceptions. Really couldn't turn the ball over. And allowed Stephon Diggs to have 92 receiving yards. So, overall, the Patriots did not play well, and the Bills were able to grind out a win over them. Then as for the Cardinals, I believe they had a bye week. They definitely need to get some things situated and see if they can at least climb the ranks to a playoff spot. But again, very underwhelming so far this season. I know Kyler Murray hasn't really been playing at the par. Him and DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, they look like they're on the same page. It just looks like this team is just off a little bit. And also defensively, they just haven't really been doing well at all. So it is interesting. But I think, since the Cardinals are coming off a bye week, getting healthy, I'm going to have the Cardinals here winning by 1. I think it's going to be a really close game. Both teams, I feel like, are evenly matched on both sides of the ball. We'll have to see when it comes down to coaching. And I feel like the Cardinals have a little bit better chemistry, possibly. So give me the Cardinals here by 1. And that'll be all for today's episode. Thank you all for listening and watching all the way through. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you go ahead, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as well as share the video with anybody they think may want to listen to it. But again, that'll be all. Thank you for listening, watching all the way through. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.